Armstrong.
My name's John Armstrong. I'm here with Frack Action, but as a lifelong resident of this local area here in the Catskills, I want to speak to just two of the countless gross flaws and inadequacies of the DEC's study of the DISC-EIS and the proposed regulations, which true science clearly shows fracking cannot be done safely. But as a resident of this area, I can't believe that I have to come here and tell the DEC that fracking will negatively impact hunting and fishing in this region outrageously. The DEC, how come I have to say this? I'm a lifelong fisher. I was fishing as far back as I can remember. We have pristine streams in the Catskills, the Hudson Valley, this entire region. In fact, many of the best trout streams in the entire country. The fishing industry here brings in so much money for tourism and to our local businesses. The impacts of that from fracking with dangerous levels of methane contamination, runoff, and various toxic chemicals that could get into those streams is outrageous. The local land that supports an incredible local hunting industry, as well as our cultural history, what's important to me, is going to be impacted by fragments in the land from new roads, new wells, the impacts of a heavy industrial process, air contamination, water contamination, the health of our game that supports our hunting industry. How can we let this go forward? Why has this not been studied thoroughly and comprehensively? Speaking of this, 5 years ago, I went to New Paltz, the DEC office, and passed my fly fishing guide examination. This brings in a ton of money, but it also speaks to the fact that here in this region, we're bringing people to our quality streams. I've also been a ski instructor for 5 years. I talk to people from Brooklyn, from New Jersey, from all around the world, going up on the ski lifts. Why do they want to come to this region, to bring their money here, to support our jobs, my jobs through high school, being a ski instructor? They come here because we have such a beautiful environment, pristine, pure. We bring in so much money from tourism because of that. Fracking would completely take that off the table. Nobody's going to come to this region if it's contaminated by thousands of trucks per well, by flares going up from the gas drilling process, all the methane migration that brings these flares up in the air through the process. Nobody's going to come here. In New York State, over half of the wineries, which bring in billions of dollars of revenue and millions of tourists every year, have signed on to a letter asking for a ban on fracking because they know there's no safe way to do this, and that allowing fracking in New York State will be the death of their industry, which has taken generations, at least 30 years, to truly grow, to even be competitive in some ways with California. Economically, it's entirely clear that fracking is not worth it for New York State, and the only way to protect New York's economic vitality as well as our environment is to ban fracking now and say no.
Teresa Dixon.
Thank you, DEC, for having me speak to you today. And also, 1,000 million thanks for all of you here that care for our New York State pristine environment. So thank you for coming as well. On my behalf, I'm thanking you. My name is Teresa Dixon. I live in New Paltz. And there are several key points that I wish to comment on. Number one, is there a statewide need for hydrofracturing to expand natural gas production given the state's existing policies and future goals? Are we going to risk our air and water qualities? Are we going to risk that? Number two, there is an absence of mandatory liability insurance protecting the homeowner against detrimental impacts on their lands and homes. Number three, cumulative impacts are an aggregate of local impacts, and the connection is not always clear in the discussion. It is unclear what facilities are capable throughout the state of handling the end disposal of production brine. Number four, private water well testing before, during, and after extraction should not be recommended, but mandatory and on a set schedule. It is a cost of doing business. Number 5, reevaluation of drilling in primary and principal aquifers after 2 years is too early for assessing cumulative impacts. Number 6, exemptions under trade secret are unclear and the statements are contradictory, with some contradicted by the cited Public Officers Law 89.5. There should be no exemptions. Okay, the fundamental question remaining is whether hydrofracturing is a necessary step for energy production and availability to warrant the extremely complicated regulations and oversight required to ensure pollution is contained, even without the ever-present possibility of accidents. DEC inspectors cannot be present so consistently that they can ensure everything is done correctly. They have to rely on the companies. Why is an Whoops. Thank you.
Chris White. Chris White.
My name's Chris White, and I'm here on behalf of Congressman Maurice Hinchey, who's in Washington today for votes.
Quiet, please.
I'd like to thank the DEC for the opportunity to comment on the revised draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement on horizontal drilling and hydrofracking in the Marcellus Shale. Congressman Hinchey appreciates the hard work that Commissioner Martens and his staff has invested in this document. We know it's been difficult with the DEC, having lost so many staff over the past few years. Despite this sincere effort, Congressman Hinchey believes that the SGEIS falls far short of what is needed to protect our local communities from the risks posed by shale gas drilling, and it does not fully mitigate potential threats to public health, drinking water, air quality, and municipal infrastructure. 2 years ago, in response to the first draft SGEIS, Congressman Hinchey provided 11 detailed recommendations to mitigate the risks of shale gas drilling. These included a cumulative impact study, a ban on the use of toxic chemicals in fracking fluids, a requirement for full public disclosure of all chemicals used, more DEC staff to oversee drilling operations, phased-in development of new well pads, and more. Unfortunately, these recommendations are not included. We have learned much more about hydraulic fracturing since then. More incidents of broken industry promises, harm to local communities, air pollution, water contamination have all been reported. Just a few weeks ago in Pavilion, Wyoming, the EPA found fracking chemicals in well water. These incidents raise serious new concerns that are not addressed in the SGEIS. Physicians and other health professionals around New York have called for a full assessment of the public health impacts of gas exploration and drilling. The SGEIS omits this as well. EPA has begun a new study on the impact of fracking, and this study is expected to produce initial results by the end of next year. The EPA is also developing rules to protect sites from air pollutants. The congressman believes it would be irresponsible and unwise for New York State to allow new shale gas drilling before these actions are completed. The consequences of failing to safeguard our water resources, air quality, and public health would far outweigh the purported economic benefits associated with drilling. Congressman Hinchey believes the current SGEIS does not provide the needed protections and should be rejected. Thank you.
Rudy Hunter.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rudy Hunter, and I represent no organization, but I'm thrilled to be following Hinchey's guy. As one of the angry villagers, I'd like to bring up just 3 points in my allotted 3 minutes regarding the corruption of hydrofracking trying to come into New York State. Number one, Every single food and medicine product labeled for sale in this state requires exact, precise, and honest labeling so I do not suffer any adverse effects such as allergic reactions or toxic reactions to ingesting it. The government thinks that proper labeling is crucially important to help save my life and that of my children and loved ones. The government does not, however, seem to hold the same standard to the undisclosed chemical makeup of hydrofracking solutions. The quaint term proprietary means in actuality lethal. The government cares that I know about trans fats in margarines, but not carcinogens in my drinking water and land. And just to be clear, the term carcinogen means cancer-causing agent. Number two, the hydrofracking issue is 100% based on profit. Not science, not jobs, not environment. This is an issue of greed and money. The gas industry is funding Governor Cuomo's campaign. There is no need for me to spell it out any further. The gas company is funding the New York State governor. That's wrong. It's not just the euphemism called a conflict of interest. It's wrong, unethical, illegal, slimy, creepy, and bad. Oh, good. Number three, I own land in New York State which will likely plummet in value if hydrofracking is allowed anywhere near where I live, and it's an imminent threat right now. My property value will plummet, so will that of my neighbors, many of whom haven't even considered it yet. It will affect their neighbors, and so on. The governor and the gas industry don't seem to care about that, nor the very real potential that they will be directly responsible for sicknesses in animals, children, and adults. I do not want hydrofracking in this state, nor do my neighbors. We expect to be listened to and demand that our homes and land remain sacred, clean, and untampered with. Thank you.
Alan Weiniger. Just a reminder again to please refrain from commenting or applause during our speakers so that our court reporter is able to make an accurate record of all comments.
My name is Ellen Weininger. I'm here today as a parent, as an environmental health educator with grassroots environmental education, and as a New Yorker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to express grave concerns regarding high volume slick water hydraulic fracturing for natural gas extraction, with particular concern for the lack of an analysis of health impacts of hydrofracking in the revised SGEIS and the complete disregard by the DEC, the DOH, and the governor of numerous testimonies, letters, and other warnings by countless physicians, independent scientists, and health advocacy groups regarding the SGEIS inadequacies in addressing human health. During a recent hearing before the New York State Assembly on October 6th, Commissioner Martin stated that the DEC worked hand in glove with the DOH on the SGEIS document, yet there is no mention of any consultation with physicians or healthcare professionals in the report. Furthermore, in its 1,500 pages, the SGEIS fails to mention children, the most vulnerable population. Children are uniquely vulnerable to toxic exposures due to their immature organs and developing bodies, making it more difficult for them to eliminate certain toxins. Due to their size, children receive proportionally greater doses of chemical contaminants found in air, water, and food. Even a small exposure occurring during a critical window of a child's development could result in permanent adverse health outcomes. In the President's Cancer Panel report from 2008-2009, Reducing Environmental Cancer Risk, the panel summarizes its peer-reviewed scientific findings and outlines concrete actions that government, industry, and healthcare professionals must take. The report states opportunities for eliminating or minimizing cancer-causing and cancer-promoting environmental exposures must be acted upon to protect all Americans, but especially children. They are at special risk due to their smaller body mass and rapid physical development, both of which magnify their vulnerability to known or suspected carcinogens. A study published in the journal Health Affairs in May 2011, just recently, updated and expanded a previous analysis of the annual costs of environmentally mediated diseases in children in the United States. The study found that the costs of childhood cancer, asthma, and neurological disorders had escalated from $54.9 billion in the 2002 analysis to to $76.6 billion in the 2008 analysis. Dr. Leo Trisande, the lead author, states that the analysis reemphasizes for policymakers the implications of failing to prevent toxic chemical exposures not only for the health of children, but also for the health of the economy. It is time for you, our government officials, to fulfill your most fundamental responsibility, which is the protection and safety and health of all the citizens of New York State, and withdraw the current draft SGEIS and draft regulations to complete an assessment of public health.
Jeff Gallagher.
My name is Jeff Gollier. I'm an Episcopal priest in the Diocese of New York, and I'm the vicar of St. John's Church in Ellenville, just a few miles down the road from here. I want to thank the DEC and SUNY Sullivan for scheduling this hearing and for the opportunity to speak. Our diocese includes 62,000 members living in New York City and 7 counties to the north: Putnam, Rockland, Westchester, Dutchess, Orange, Sullivan, and Ulster. We recognize the different points of view about hydraulic fracturing, but because of the challenges that our communities face, especially in this region, we advise strongly against it. The most important reason for this position is simple. Our member congregations are all part of communities, and we're concerned that every part of community life that the issue of fracking raises, from threats to property values and heavy traffic on our roads, to the seriously hazardous chemicals that will be put into the environment. We know what the reports have said on different sides of this issue, but there comes a point when the issue comes down to basic safety and risks. So the question that we're hearing today is, what kind of risk are we willing to take? High on that list of priorities is the quality of groundwater, which must be protected. As much as industry says that risks have been reduced and that technology has become more safe and reliable, we all know that accidents happen. They always happen and always will. The problem is that there is no acceptable risk with regard to water. We drink it, grow food in it, clean ourselves with it. In the church, we baptize people in it. For all kinds of reasons, the water is sacred. This is not negotiable. No level of debate can change this. No amount of money spent to influence people's opinions will alter this basic fact. It is painfully obvious to anyone living in this part of New York that jobs are a significant issue. A whole generation has suffered the loss of work, and what we need is for economic opportunity to return. In order for that to happen, we must maintain a level of environmental quality that will keep this area not only attractive to tourism, but also lucrative to business. Deep drilling will bring some jobs in the short term, but the very last thing that we need now is another threat to the possibility of a sustainable economy. Once mistakes are made affecting our groundwater, and they will be made, no businesses will want to invest their resources here over the long term. Polluted water isn't good for people, and it's not good for business. All the different facts and opinions expressed here point to a moral decision that we must make. We might, under some circumstances, say we're willing to take some risk, but not this risk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Carolyn Price.
My name is Carolyn Price, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. DEC, you have a very important job protecting the environment and the people of New York State. But don't be pressured, bullied, and harassed by the antis' misinformation and lies. They have one intent and one intent only: to ban the development of natural gas in New York State.
Criminalize.
All right, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Get rid of him.
Yes.
Can we please get some help with this gentleman, please? Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Nearly 2 years ago, in helping with the research for the movie Gas Odyssey, a person was asked, "What do you want?" The answer: drilling for natural gas banned. At the time, that answer was surprising. However, as time has gone on, it has become very clear that the antis want drilling for natural gas banned. Giving in to what the antis want would drive us into energy insecurity with continued reliance on foreign oil and energy poverty with the high cost of renewable energy. This push to ban natural gas drilling was very evident in anti-speeches at the DEC hearing in Binghamton. It was also evident that most people haven't read the SGEIS. Answers to much of what anti-people were complaining about are in the SGEIS. The DEC is to be commended for taking the bold step of addressing incidents in Pennsylvania. It was very reassuring that the SGEIS regulations in New York State will either prevent or mitigate these issues. DEC, you are using facts.
Excuse me, let me wait till this is done. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. DEC, you are using facts and science to formulate the SGEIS regulations. Thank you for your hard work. With the release of the final SGEIS, permitting will begin in New York State, and New York State will start to come out of economic despair into economic prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Armstrong.
As a lifelong resident of New York State, a mother of 3, a professor, and a scientist, I have closely examined fracking and its impact in communities across the country and in Pennsylvania. I myself have done scientific research, I have published peer-reviewed studies, and I know good science when I see it. As I've followed the debate about fracking in New York, what I keep hearing from Governor Cuomo is that we need to get rid of the emotion on fracking and listening to the science. As a scientist myself, I completely agree with our governor. When the DEC released the revised draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement, I reviewed it as a scientist. What I found was not a scientific document, but a political document that grossly neglects the science of fracking. The actual science shows that fracking cannot be done safely. It cannot be done without jeopardizing our air, water, and the actual environment on which our communities depend. The DEC's proposed regulations are entirely inadequate. Let's look first at the most obvious of concerns we all have about fracking, the contamination of our drinking water. There are clear and numerous documented cases of groundwater contamination from fracking, and dangerous levels of methane migration have been found and documented. There are peer-reviewed scientific studies documenting such problems and cases where this is happening, yet those are not considered by the DEC. Just south in Pennsylvania, we see radioactivity in drilling waste that is typically hundreds or thousands of times what is acceptable according to the EPA. There is no plan in New York to deal with what would amount to billions of gallons of such wastewater, except to run it through local treatment facilities that are in no way equipped or capable of treating it. It's not even in question. This means that highly radioactive, toxic wastewater will quickly make its way into our streams, lakes, and inevitably our drinking water. The science here is clear, and it's the science that needs to be examined, not private political agendas. There is no evidence that fracking can be done safely. If the DEC will look at the evidence, they will conclude that fracking is not safe. It's time for Governor Cuomo to follow his own advice and listen to the science on fracking. It is time to ban fracking.
All right, we're going to call our next group of speakers to come forward.
Our next group of speakers is 32 through 40. Victoria Lesser, please make your way to the very front row. Barbara Arundel, Bruce Ferguson, Leah Maidenbaum, Carla Fisk, Brandy Murdala, Susan McDonald, okay, that's it. Susan Van Dolson, Susan DeLone, Caroline, I believe it's O-R-A, Martin. Okay, Martin.
Our next speaker is Noel Van Sewell. Van Sewell.
I am Noel Van Sewell from Long Eddy, New York. I am an elected member of the Sullivan West School Board and a retired school administrator. I am here today speaking as an individual, not for the board. For many years, I have watched with a heavy heart as class after class of our best and brightest students have graduated from schools across the region, never to return because there are no jobs here. The irony is that we are sitting on a vast treasure of easily exploitable natural gas reserves. Natural gas drilling has the potential for creating thousands of good-paying jobs here that will end our unemployment problem and jumpstart the economy of our region. In fact, industry sources say that they are eager to hire and train high school graduates with no experience for starting salaries ranging from $40,000 to $60,000 a year. We don't have the luxury of waiting any longer for the approval of these regulations. Additionally, I am the co-founder and president of the Sullivan Delaware Property Owners Association. We are one of the largest pro-natural gas drilling coalitions in New York State, representing over 70,000 acres belonging to property owners in our region. The 70,000 acres we represent is in fact 10% of the land area of Sullivan County. There are thousands of additional property owners in our region on our informal waiting list who also want the opportunity to share in the development of the Marcellus and Utica shales. You will hear many people today claiming that hydrofracking is dangerous and that the prohibitions against hydrofracking in the New York City and Syracuse watersheds is proof positive that chemicals used in the process will kill us. This is an urban myth and completely untrue. Recently, State Senator John Bonasek sent out a mass mailing to residents of his district, which quotes DEC Commissioner Joe Martens as saying, quote, what it really comes down to is sediment control. Syracuse and New York City are the only public water bodies that do not filter their water, unquote. Radical environmentalists and the extreme members of the popular press have been intellectually dishonest in claiming the problem is toxic chemicals instead of mud. In summary, the Sullivan Delaware Property Owners Association urges the DEC to ignore the emotional and unscientific arguments of the environmental radicals here today and immediately adopt these regulations. 3.5 years of delays is more than enough. Thank you.
Fred Peckham. Quiet, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Peckham. I'm a fifth-generation riverfront landowner from Hancock, New York. Many people have expressed concerns about high-volume hydraulic fracturing, but in listening to some of these concerns that continue to be expressed, I cannot help but wonder whether people have actually read the current draft. I believe it's worthwhile to list some of the specific provisions of the study that actually address these issues. Surface spills are a major concern. The study includes measures to reduce the probability of a surface spill and by mandating secondary containment units to dramatically reduce the impact if a spill does occur. It requires a well operator to disclose the contents of the fracking fluid being used at each site. Prohibits well pads above or within 500 feet of a primary or principal aquifer or in 100-year floodplains. The study requires advanced testing, ongoing monitoring of all private water wells within 1,000 feet or more of a well pad. Provides detailed specifications for construction of well bore casings to prevent migration of methane and flowback into the aquifers, and has specific requirements for the tracking and treatment of flowback water. Also has detailed requirements for the disposal of well cuttings. Strongly encourages the use of multi-well pads and requires remedial surface treatments once drilling is complete to minimize surface disturbance and cumulative impacts, and includes measures to reduce air pollution, noise, the visual impact of drilling, and the impact on local roads. I'm confident that the DEC will make natural gas development safer than it has ever been and safer than many other permitted industrial and agricultural activities that can pollute aquifers. This region is in a depression and has been for some time. The main industries in the region are logging, farming, quarrying, and tourism. As of late, the logging and quarrying industries, as well as many of the farmers, have been having a difficult time making ends meet with no end in sight. Tourism provides little in the way of high-paying jobs. These jobs are seasonal, low-wage service jobs, not enough to raise a family on. It's time for New York to join the other gas-producing states and take advantage of this natural resource. It will provide much-needed jobs in an area once called Appalachian Light by then-Governor Spitzer. I would like to thank the DEC for its due diligence in completing this comprehensive document, a job well done. And now I urge you to complete your work. 4 years is long enough. The debate on hydraulic fracturing should remain based on science and fact, or it will have failed to serve the public interest in the science, and the facts tell us that it can and has been done, and done in a safe and responsible way over 1 million times. Thank you.